This is going to be hard. Geoff iNcontroL Robinson passed away suddenly this last weekend, and our world is infinitely worse for it.
If you knew Geoff, if you were close to him, if you got to spend time with him, we are so sorry for your loss.
Geoff had an immediate impact on the people around him. He was comedy gold. He was fiercely loyal, and most importantly, he was devastatingly honest.
Geoff Robinson was an absolute force of nature. He was a foundation on which a multitude of communities were built.
There have been numerous tributes to him online already, and there will be more to come, because he had such a powerful personality and touched so many lives. Like Reese said in his tribute article on Frontline Gaming, Geoff really lived his life. So please, if you're listening to this, go out and live yours.
If you want to support Geoff's family, they have asked that you donate to the SoCal Bulldog Rescue Society. And if you have a story about Geoff, or just want to talk about what Geoff meant to you, we're asking anyone and everyone that would like to record their thoughts and send them to us either online via Facebook or via email at peter.colosimo@gmail.com. We will compile the sound bites as a memorial to a man that really was larger than life.
Geoff, if you're listening, these two tryhards are dedicating this episode to you. Like true Canadians, we apologize if the wit comes a little slower this episode. Rest well, buddy. Everyone misses you.
Frontline Gaming presents 40k Stat Center with your hosts Val Heffelfinger and the Falcon.
Everything is opposite land and the upside down under, where winter is in July as we touch base with WinterCon.
The 416 and the 905 touch tips in the T-Dot for TGX.
We couldn't avert our eyes when the Show Me State showed off their showmanship at the Show Me Showdown.
Sit back, relax, and hope your Geller field holds. It's the battle in the warp.
You may take our lands, but you'll never take our freedom as the Caledonian Revolution rolls through Stockport.
They came from the land of the ice and snow, from the Midnight Sun GT where the hot springs flow.
And we take a look at the Central Valley Showdown where nothing important happened.
And though these summer days, they're drifting away, we'll still have that Summer Hull GT. Hello, Peter. As that very oppressively long introduction of puns and humor might attest to, it was a devastatingly busy weekend of Warhammer. 5 majors, 3 GTs, and 1 event that just barely missed cutting the mustard. Thank God.
Oh my lord, I was so happy that they only had 26 people actually play a game of Warhammer.
I've never rooted against someone else's success before like that.
So hard. We're going to do our best today to do each event justice, but we can't make any promises, as we do have to go to bed eventually, and Val needs at least 6 hours of sleep or he just can't operate.
6 hours on recording night? That's a luxury. Come on. Yeah, no, I have not been getting 6 hours. Speaking of which, the show is entirely unsustainable, and
oh, we're 100% boned if this keeps up.
Oh yeah, we're fucked.
Man, this summer has been crazy. Week after week, people are pumping out 6 to 8 events, major or GT status. In the weeks we don't have them, we have something like ATC where 500 players decide to get together and bump uglies. It's absolutely insane. I'm really, really thankful that we've started up the 40k correspondence group, because they've already shown themselves to be a pretty big help.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've personally given them very little to work with, and they have stepped up to just offer help without being asked, which is fantastic. So yeah, if you guys are out there able to help, hey, I'm just going to throw this out there. Anyone in the Pacific time zone who really likes editing podcasts and 40K, let me know.
Or hey, if you just want to help write a couple of scripts up about events that maybe you know about or attended, perhaps you know a little better where to throw that shade about that really crappy town where an event was held. Anything you can do is always a big help, so that we're not up until 3 or 4 in the morning trying to figure out how to make a podcast work.
There's only so many insults we can make about corn and Nebraska.
Yeah.
GTs happen in very unusual places. So I suppose we are beating around the bush a little bit. There's a lot of meat on this bone. Anything on the plug train this week?
Well, I would like to plug an event that's coming up next weekend. They're kind of on the verge of a GT. As far as I understand, they do have 30 people registered, but you know how that is. It's the Gorks Grand Tournament happening in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the city of my birth. That's right. That is the area in which the Falcon, broke out of his egg and flew so gracefully to land where he is today. I hear they've put together quite an event. They've spent a ton of money and time getting terrain and tables together, and I would really like to see that hit and maintain GT status.
You just reminded me of one of the number one most requested things for the show, and that's a piercing falcon cry as the intro ends. So we've really got to get that added because people are demanding it at this point.
I don't understand, but I will do my best, folks. To be honest, every time I've been asked to be on any podcast, that's really the only thing they're interested in is my Falcon impressions. So I guess I can get it.
Maybe we should just record you actually trying to make a falcon sound, and that'll be it. Because we don't need to rely on expensive sound effects for everything.
It's true, and I mean we can only pay Keith so much money.
Oh, Keith, the man sounds like he really needs hoagie money. So we got to keep him flush. Capital City Bloodbath, of course, in August. Peter and I are jet setting over there, flying in for the weekend, doing the stream with the Honest Wargamer, Rob Symes. It's pretty cool. We'll be on the Talking Box, Talking Warhammer. I'm pretty sure that's August 23, 24, 25.
Something like that. Who really cares? We're going to be there. It's going to be awesome. If you haven't already bought a ticket, go look it up. Buy one. TJ Lanigan's going to be there. Jim Vessel. I hear there's a lot of big names showing up from the East Coast of the United States to plow their trade. If you're into AOS or any of those other weird hobby games that lesser beings play, by all means, I believe basically everything is represented, and it's going to be a really, really good time. I'm not sure what exactly I'm going to be doing in the commentator's booth. Val seems to think I make a good color man. I think that I'm just too handsome a face for radio, so we'll have to see.
Get that beard trim, pal.
Oh yeah, that's up on the docket here as soon as I get back to my hometown in Alberta.
Spruce up the mushroom cut. get that beard nice and like Joey Fatone from the Backstreet Boys. Just nice clean lines. It's gonna be good.
That is definitely a person that I look up to.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't? All right. Let's hit a little bumper here.
Tournament news is made possible by bestcoastpairings.com. Download the BCP TO app to organize events for just about any tabletop game system. Download the player app to easily find and participate in events from around the world. Subscribe to BCP for as little as $5 a month to support the team and unlock additional features. Available for iOS and Android. BestCoastPairings.com. Competitive events easier.
Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The land of my birth.
Forgettable New York.
Yeah, maybe once upon a time it was forgettable New York when our best rapper was Choclair. But these days we've got Drake. We used to have, I don't even remember his name anymore. LeBron James? Kenyon Martin?
Chris Bosh?
I don't know. Some guy who's tall. We won a championship because of him. Toronto is the real deal. And what would represent being a big deal city, a big boy place with big boy pants, than a big boy major ITC event? That's right. The Tabletop Gaming Expo took place last weekend, and yours truly, Val Heffelfinger, stepped into the arena, this time not as a terrified Christian being fed to lions, but instead as the tournament organizer himself. And I think I put on quite the event, Mr. Colosimo.
Well, I mean, I can't say that I disagree. You definitely had the big names. I mean, Mr. TJ Lanigan himself showed up, cuffs and all. Jim Vessel, although I don't know if he made it through the second day. It sounds like he had a rough time the first night. Steve Pamprine was there. I mean, there were a lot of big names from the Warhammer community that made their way into that hallowed hall. What hallowed hall was it again, Val?
Sandman's Signature, Airport West, a shining tower into the sky, approximately 11 stories, in a second floor ballroom, perhaps convention hall, long and narrow. It wasn't the most spacious of places, but to be honest with you, in these parts, like a lot of big cities, we were so happy to have it. And I should also take this moment to really, really shout out something. I said I was a tournament organizer, but in this organization, TGX, the actual fledging, maybe someday con, is the guys who are running that are actually the ones doing the hard work. That's Lionel and Fab and Scott. Those guys all actually worked out the location. They worked out the logistics, most of the tables. They did a lot of the setup and the breakdown. They were running around, dealing with the venue itself. My job was almost strictly dealing with the tournament itself. So the TGX guys started this about 3 years ago because there really wasn't a big event of any kind, big tournament for War Machine, at the time AOS, 40k. So those guys were the ones with the vision, and I've enthusiastically supported them in all my years participating. And each year we wanted to start with a GT, but we fell a bit short on our first try. We actually had 26 players. Last year I was hoping we could just jump straight to Major. We got to a healthy GT, and this year we got up to, I think it was about 70 players confirmed, 2 drops before we started, so 68 players started the event, which was pretty pleasing for me.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually an amazing conversion rate. 68 players out of 70, generally you lose about 10 to 15% of your registrants, so that's really good news.
I think what made the difference on that was making people upload their lists to BCP. We set it up for a week before. Unlike some other tournaments this weekend, we let the Chaos Codex happen because YOLO. And
yeah, why not?
Why not? Who cares? It's toys. So, but having people upload their lists made me find out essentially who was going to put up or shut up. We had 2 drops, and they were very, very legitimate drops. Who did drop before that, I was able to then pressure a bunch of people into coming. Eric Scrivens drove like 8 hours on a whim. I think he bought his ticket on Wednesday or Thursday when he heard we were starting to lose some people. So yeah, it was really, really good. I highly, highly recommend, guys, get those lists into BCP early. It's kind of like an RSVP.
Did you guys do any streaming?
There's a lot of good footage here. We had a great streaming table. Scary from Scarredcast, as I said. He's probably got all the VODs up on YouTube, or we'll start porting them over to YouTube, or maybe he's keeping them for his Patreons. I'm not even sure. He was a hero. He was on stream probably, at least 12 hours on the first day, and then probably another 6 hours on the second day. So it was just a phenomenal tour de force, and there's some great games on there, especially the top table. The final matchup looked quite good. I still haven't had a chance to watch it, though.
Well, I did manage to catch a couple games myself, and I was thoroughly impressed. Scary did a fantastic job. If you haven't had the chance, people, I really do recommend you check out the Scarredcast channel on Twitch. He doesn't only just do these little commentating gigs. He's mostly known for putting out some pretty excellent bat reps and discussions on Drukhari play, and he has a pretty decent painting channel on the go too.
So the weekend was not without its hiccups. Actually, the first day itself went completely fine, and actually went entirely fine, really, until I'd say kind of the last few minutes. Jim Vessel was playing a local guy from the area named Dylan, who actually went on to beat Jim in that game, and I found out that maybe things were getting a little chippy, a little heated between the two of them, because the game wasn't over yet, and it had already been about 4 minutes since I'd called round time. And so I approached the table, and I found that Jim had 10 minutes remaining on his clock. Dylan had 0. And I'm not assigning any blame for that on either player. Really, my opinion is here that there's a couple things that could have happened there, which would have been either the clock wasn't set up correctly, which is possible but doubtful. But more likely to me, they were pausing the clock. And guys, just so you know, pausing the clock does you no favors, doesn't get you extra time. just means that time isn't allocated. So, if your opponent is pausing the clock a lot to ask a question or whatever, they should probably be running that on their time. That's basically how it is. If an opponent is asking a lot of questions, those questions should be on their own time. This was a Chaos versus Chaos matchup as well. So I'm not sure where a lot of the chippiness was coming from. It was the fourth game of the day, and so maybe it was just two guys pretty tired with a really grindy mirror matchup. But at any rate, there wasn't much I could do by then, and I think this is the second lesson as a now officially a major TO speaking. If you're having a bad time, or even if you're just not jiving with your opponent and things are getting rough. And these guys were, by the way, they're not like shouting at each other or anything. It's just, an uncomfortable game, I think, is what it looked like to me. Just come grab me. I would have been happy to be there standing the whole time. And unfortunately, I found out when it was way too late. Jim narrowly lost by 1 point. I watched them as they edited up and proceeded to have a good time anyway. And didn't quite make it back for the next day. Luckily he did, because that's where his army was, and so I got to hang out with one of the prettiest armies in 40k at the score table at the front of the room. But yeah, that was Jim's Vessels tournament. He had a great run up until then. After that game, Dylan actually went right into another mirror versus TJ. And yeah, actually, why don't we let TJ share a couple of his thoughts about TGX and what he was thinking about coming into it.
All right, so going into the tournament, realizing, who was going to be there, what kind of meta we were looking at, I knew it was going to be a really difficult weekend. You've got tons of ETC Canada members going. You've got we had a couple of competitive players from the U.S. going, myself included, and Jim Vessel was going to be there as well. He's number one in ITC right now, so I knew it was going to be a super, super tough weekend. So I was definitely excited for the challenge. People I had my eye out for, obviously me and Jim have played against each other a couple of times, so he's definitely somebody that I look out for, look for his new list. We're playing the same army, the same faction, so any kind of information I can kind of glean off of him or look at what's working well for him, maybe incorporate into my list, is definitely something I was looking out for. I was told when I got there that Devin actually built his a portion of his list around beating basically plague bears in general. So that was something I was really had my eye out for as well. And then Chris Haynes, captain of Team Canada for ETC, was someone else who basically said that he was very interested to play, and he definitely had a list that he thought was going to be capable of beating mine. So that was someone else to look out for as well.
So it appears that TJ Lanigan doesn't listen to this show despite being on every other episode. Is this a shock to you?
I think so. I was starting to, let's try that again. I think so. I was really starting to look up to TJ. I began to think that maybe he was going to get that Canadian citizenship and become one of us. But yeah, it's quite obvious that he doesn't care.
The reason I'm saying that, of course, everyone, if you haven't listened, the evolution of Devin's list, which we'll get into, has sort of been told on this very show, and he had called out the fact that he had switched to the list that he brought to TGX specifically to deal with Chaos Hordes, Chaos Plague Bearers with the characters and the such behind it. So, yeah, TJ, come on, you gotta be looking out for that.
Come on, guy.
Come on, guy.
Don't just listen to the episodes you're on. I know that's what's going on here.
Why don't we hear what he did to prepare a little bit? I'm sure he chatted with Jim about, how that game went down at dinner. Was he preparing for maybe a chippy, challenging game? Or even just, a tough opponent. Let's see what TJ had to say about preparing for what was going to be in round 5.
I played Dylan in the morning. He played Jim the round before. They had a pretty rough finish, unfortunately. So I knew that it was going to be a close game. Mirror matches are never, decided before we begin, just because of how Chaos, works in general, psychic powers and things like that, and just how dice are. So I knew it was going to be a very close game. I wanted to make sure that I was 100% ready for it. So I studied, basically made sure it was a very clean game on my side. I studied all of my movements, studied what was positioning. So a lot of times what would happen was he would check something just to see if he was in range, or he could kind of sneak past or do something. And before he even picked up the tape measure, he was like, you already measured that. And I was like, yeah. So that was a lot of stuff that I checked myself for.
So a couple other things I really wanted to highlight in watching that game. One was TJ didn't come with his backup. You know, he may have heard some things and some grumbling from an incoherently drunk Jim Vessel at the dinner before. I did make sure to be nearby just in case, but I didn't actually need to be. Things progressed very well. He handled himself quite calmly at the table, and I think that's honestly the benefit of playing, round 5 at the beginning of a day after a good night's sleep versus round 4 at the end of the day, really tired from being on your feet. So I was really impressed with how he handled himself. And I also wanted to really call out, again, a little, I'm really enjoying this T.O. soapbox. I get how the Weiermuller feels. I don't know why he's so salty. There's so much power up here.
It's really great. And the best part of it for me is I don't have to say anything. I can just sit here and listen.
No, you really should, because I am the T.O. of a major ITC event. I mean, you could learn something here.
I'm trying my best.
Here's what I'm going to say. But I have seen a lot of people talking about playing with intent. People seem to think that means playing by what you meant to do, rather than declared intent, which is what the spirit of the ITC Code of Conduct is really talking about, which is before you do something, you say out loud very clearly what you're going to do. And you pre-measure and you make sure that the move that you're making is both legal and agreed upon by your opponent. And that doesn't mean they have to give you permission to do stuff. That just means that you both agree what happened, so that later on, if something is, bumped or different, well, we've agreed that the intention was that it was there. That doesn't mean that you forgot to move something and you get a freebie every time. That's up to your opponent for sure. But it means that, once you've agreed that a model is where it is, later on, that's where it is. So I just wanted to cover that. And also, they were very good about the clock. I made sure that was run very cleanly. They finished right on time because it's a very long grinding game in that matchup, so I was pretty impressed. Another thing, though, that didn't go quite so smoothly at the start of round 5, I was informed that my beloved friend, my dear friend, Stephen Pamperine, was rocking an illegal list. A slightly over-pointed list. How many points?
I believe it was 67 points over when everything was said and done.
67, 61, a not negligible amount. So I had to figure out pretty quickly. Luckily, I had some people there that I could bounce things off of. Ultimately, though, I leaned on the ITC Code of Conduct. I literally sat down and I read the penalties offered for the offense in the Code of Conduct, which I thought was pretty cool, that I had that there to lean on. And ultimately, actually, what the recommended foul was, so the foul, of course, is being overpointed, but the penalty recommended was to pull the models, which would have been an easy fix for him, two smash guns come out, and then a yellow card. However, given that he was 3-0 with a draw, I felt that it probably wasn't appropriate for him to be in the running to win the event, even if he were to pull the models. So I explained to him that I was going to give him the yellow, pull the models, and also give him a round loss in the previous round. He said, he was in the middle of a pretty, a bad weekend. He missed his flight for good reasons, but nonetheless, he missed his flight. So he actually drove 8 hours to be there. And he said at that point that he would drop and get a head start on his drive, which I understood, and he hit the road. Another T.O. soapbox moment here, guys. I'm a big proponent of tools, and I think Battlescribe is a really good one. It's a lot of people talk about how it's full of errors and yada yada. Well, the orc, in this case, that's what Pamps is running. The orcs are, on their 100th or so iteration of points and values, it's going to be accurate, all right? And you're going to see exactly how things are totaled. What happened was he essentially had cut-pasted a list that he had gotten from a friend, tweaked a few things. Actually, it was a list he had given to a friend, got it back, tweaked some things, added some boys, and when he was doing the calculation up on his calculator, which he described, quote, as my version of Battle Scribe, which was damning. He then missed the Weird Boy he was supposed to put in there, and that was actually the 61 points. So that sucks because his weekend kind of went for naught. And, you want to make sure that your list is accurate. I think the easiest way to do that is Battle Scribe. Do you disagree? Agree?
No, I 100% agree. I think we should use the tools available to us, but just make sure that you're always double checking. There is nothing wrong with slapping your list together in BattleScribe. I always feel like if you're going to be going to a big event, do the extra due diligence, pull out your codex. You should own one anyway, and double check your numbers, double check BattleScribe's numbers. Because like some people say, they do make mistakes. I will argue that they are generally few and far between. And they do have a bugs page that will list them all out for you if you care to look. But either way, why avoid using such a useful tool is something that is kind of beyond me, in my opinion.
Where BattleScribe will more likely get things wrong is usually in options. So whether or not you can take something or give something.
Exactly.
Someone, now that's where things get really gray and complicated. So, but as far as points are concerned, that's pretty easy for it to do. And I'd be shocked if there are many inaccuracies on points left to be found in BattleScribe, except for, if it's a brand new codex like the Renegade Knight codex, yeah, maybe don't trust that one just yet. Triple, quadruple check it. But anyway, we'll move on. So Pamperine also, has reached out to a couple of his opponents. Dustin, who actually wound up finishing in third place by battle points, he was on the other half of that draw, right? So he wound up. I know. I think it's Mark in the fourth round. They had a really tight game on Twitch on the stream. It was really, really close. So those might I don't know, it's 62 points or 61 points. Maybe it goes the other way. I know Steven doesn't feel good about this. He's a really strong player, and he's reached out to his opponents about that, and he's definitely taking responsibility for the mistake. And I will genuinely say this man was not cheating, guys. This was a screw up. He suffered the penalty, and that's what it is. It's like in any sport game, whatever. He made a foul, and there was a penalty assessed for it, and he's taken it like a champ. So he's not a hero, but he did the right thing, I think. And then going on just back to round 5, Devin Swan, the Tau player that we were mentioning earlier, he was going up against a dear friend, Tim Dietlifs. Tim was running some aggressive Eldar flyer list. It's pretty cool. Devin was running his Mech Tau list, which includes some Tau flyers, which I've actually never seen the models before. And that one they were describing to each other as, at dinner the night before, as sort of a go first, win first type scenario, i.e. either side would win. And I hate that kind of talk. I always think that's kind of lame. So I asked Devin if that really was that way, because Devin did wind up with first turn, and he did wind up winning. So was it really that binary, in his opinion? Would the shoe have been on the other foot if Tim had gone first?
We both knew this was going to be a whoever goes first probably wins kind of deal. I'm not going to go into too much detail over what my first turn was. It's all on stream. Anybody can go watch it. But yeah, it was really bad. Really bad for him. Now, to Tim's credit, he did try his best to play his way out of the hole, and he came kind of close, but there was not a whole lot he could have done. And I know if I had gone second, he would have done the exact same thing, right back to me. Out of all my other test games against Mech Eldar, I usually lose Long Strike in 2 or 3 of the Hammerheads turn 1, and then, the Skyrays drop their Seekers, they kill a few things, and then that's basically the end of my hitting power, and it will just murder the rest of my army over the course of 4 turns. So, yeah, that really was a go-first thing.
There you have it. There's still binary matchups in 40k left. Does that depress you, Peter?
It does a little bit, but it is what it is. It's part of the game. There's a lot of long-range shooting out there, and really, when you look at the Tau and Eldar armies in particular, a lot of that long-range shooting is extremely fast and a little soft. It really needs that first turn to do its damage, or it's done. You see it even with Necrons with the Doom Scythe bomb in a lot of matchups. If that one Doom Scythe gets removed turn 1, the Necron army has a little bit of a harder time getting its way back. But regardless, It is what it is. I'm really happy to see Devin's Mech Tau list perform yet again. It's a very unique list, and it's one that really only he's running at this point, so it's good to see.
Why don't we go to Devin now with his take on the Game 6 experience, of course, versus TJ Lanigan, who did squeak out that win in the mirror match against Dylan in round 5. So here's Devin again.
Spoiler, I lost, but only by 2 points. And like, I feel if a couple of small things had gone my way, even if one of the small things had gone my way, or had there not been a magic box on the table, specifically in his deployment zone, like, I feel like I would have done a lot better. But like, I killed the plague bearers very quickly. I was able to get at the characters a little bit. Didn't do quite as much, but that was kind of a dice thing. But you know, it happens. But no, like, I feel the list did what it was designed to do, and I feel confident in it, and I'm very happy with how it performed. And next time I'll probably get him, so fingers crossed.
Next time I'll probably get him, so fingers crossed. Let's see if TJ thought it was that close.
So in the final matchup, I played Devin, and Devin actually built a list that a portion of the list that was designed to basically counter my list. So that was something that I was not expecting, because I'm very used to playing Mech Tau. I played it a whole bunch of times, and I usually do pretty well against it. So I wasn't super worried going into it, but then again, I had not taken a look at his list. So once I took a look at his list and realized that we were playing, I knew it was going to be a tough game. I tried to screen him out, but unfortunately the table we were at, the buildings, he was able to get flyers on top of the buildings. So there's no screening him, because I couldn't get plague bearers basically on top of the buildings to prevent him from flying up there. So he basically had his way to do that. That was a really tough match. I basically had to play, I would say I had to play my ass off just to make sure that I was able to win that game. And it was super close, 2-point victory.
He seems to agree that it was a close game. That's nice.
Always nice when you hear about a really close matchup at the top table.
Absolutely. And again, available on stream. I will be doubling back to watch it personally. Thanks to the great work by Scary on Scaredcast. No, Scary on Scaredcast. There we go. It was a great end of the tournament, and really the matchup I was hoping for, given the build-up that we've been following on this very show. How cool is that?
It's amazing.
Hey, pretty good. You can't write this stuff, guys. Okay, so I think that kind of wraps us up on TGX. Now, obviously, we didn't really touch on the list because we've talked in detail about both lists on this very show. You can go back to previous episodes. Devin would have been in the episode with
the Basement Open. You can also just go to 40kstats.com, and I have all of these lists showing right there for TGX.
That's correct. You can also go there, or, I mean, why not get a BCP subscription, right?
Hey, why not?
Without further ado, though, why don't we get on to some of the other bigger majors from the weekend? Sorry, other people, but this is kind of half my show.
Let's get that bump.
Tournament news.
Hey, Big Nasty B and RoboEd from Life After Cover Save Comedy Games podcast, and you're listening to 40k Stat Center. It's kind of cool, I guess.
Australia. And that's where we're going to begin our real journey this week, in Canberra, where 80 players huddled together in the bitter Australian winter with only their tank tops, their jeans, and their body odor to keep them warm in that 10 degrees Celsius weather. That's 50 for you Americans. Hosted and streamed by Warzone Wargaming, which you can check out at twitch.tv/Warzone Wargaming. The event was swarming with top talent from down under. We actually managed to get Matt Morrisoli, one of the top ITC players from Australia, to give us a little clip on the event.
WinterCon is held at the Canberra Exhibition Park, which is the same venue that hosts our big end-of-season event called CanCon, which is the Australian sort of equivalent of the LVO. It's probably the most premium venue that we have for big tabletop conventions like this here in Australia that's regularly used. As with most sort of vanilla ITC tournaments, they run very smoothly. The team at Warzone Wargaming, and in particular Andrew Garrard, who is the head TO, did a really good job of organising everyone, organising terrain, getting everyone where they needed to be. From my perspective, it was really good to get the win this year, as I narrowly lost to the eventual winner last year, Chris Wright, who managed to come second this year as well.
Translation, I think, I'm paraphrasing here, really nice venue. It was in Canberra, which is the capital of Australia, and he beat the guy who beat him last year. Did I get it?
You got it. Matt came out with a big spoiler. 2018's number one player from Down Under, Matt, better known as the Plague Hulk, Morrisoli, is one of the better known players in the ANZ community and was the first player in the ITC to pull out a major win with one of these Plague Bearer 1,000 Suns lists, actually. If you go back, say, a year when I first started recording tournament results and talking up lists with Pablo and the crew, I made a big hype about how someday somebody was eventually going to win a tournament with Plague Bearers and 1,000 Suns smite spam behind them. Little did I know that 1 year later, that would be all that was winning events.
Tooting your own horn a little bit there. See, you said earlier that you weren't going to be a good color analyst. That is exactly what the color brings. Analysis. Do you want me to read this list?
I mean, sure, if you would like.
Matt Morrisali, here we go. Here's his winning list from WinterCon. We have, in his first detachment, it is a Chaos Demons Undivided Battalion detachment. He had a Demon Prince. He had a Poxbringer, 20 Bloodletters, and 27 Plague Bearers with the instruments and demonic icons in all three. Not quite, but hey, close enough. And the second detachment was also a battalion detachment, and this one, his HQ was a Changecaster. And then he had a Herald of Slanesh, 20 pink hairs, 10 pairs of brimstone horrors, 20 plague bearers in this detachment, and then finally, riding up behind them, who else but our friends, the 1,000 Suns. Araman on a disc, ooh, Demon Prince of Zinch, 10 cultists, and 20 Zangors to go and beat some stuff up. He has his refined strategies here. I think he may not have even known this was an ITC tournament coming into it, because that's usually for ETC.
You got it, but I think he talks a little bit about that when he goes over the list himself, if you want to cut to one of them clips.
Oh, directly to someone who knows what they're talking about.
The list is very similar to a lot of the Chaos lists that are seeing play in the US at the moment. I've been running different variants of this for a little over a year, 18 months now. And the one that I took to WinterCon is the one that the Australian team have decided on taking as the Chaos list for ETC this year. It's not perfectly suited to ITC missions. It was designed for the ETC, but obviously got the job done on the weekend. The main strategies of this list revolve around the 3 deep striking combat blobs, so the 2 squads of 20 Bloodletters and the unit of 20 Zangors. The Zangors will either deep strike in, or they'll deploy on the board, either as a screen, or they'll hide in everyone and use the Dark Matter Crystal to either put pressure on turn 1 or to put pressure on later game against opponents who have the deep strikers of their own when I want to come in and combat those deep striking units. Additionally, it's also got the 2 units of Plague Bearers that will often stagger 1 deep strike, 1 out to maintain -2 to hit or hiding outside a line of sight for long periods of time. I've also got a lot of tech in this list. The army is literally just troops and HQs, and that includes the Khorne Lumberjack Prince with the Skull Reaver, the Herald of Slanesh with the Pavane of Slanesh or Symphony of Pain, and the Forbidden Gem. The result is sort of an army that can take the middle of the board really well with its defensive blobs and maintain a big deep striking threat for essentially the entire game, with the Zangors being able to deep strike on turn 1 or as late as turn 6, and the Bloodletters coming in on turn 2 and 3.
Ruthless. The Lumberjack Khorne Demon Prince. I hope that gets coined.
I really do too. It's way better than basically every other name anyone's tried to give it.
The Lumberjack is great.
So before we get into how the event ended, Matt did want to give a brief shout out to his 3rd and 4th round opponents. One for having such a successful first tournament, and the other for maybe coming around after what Matt himself described as a pretty salty round of play.
I'd like to give a couple of shout outs to 2 of my opponents. The first one was my 4th round opponent, Jeremy Wales. This was Jeremy's first tournament that he ever played in, and he managed to go 4-1, came 5th place overall. It's a pretty excellent result for someone who's never played a tournament before, so congratulations to Jeremy on that one. The second shout out is for my third round opponent, who was Justin Locke. The game got what we would probably call a little bit salty. I measured a deep strike radius on turn 3, discussed it, put the models on the table, but didn't actually set them up, and went into my psychic phase and cast a power, so I made a bit of an order of operations mistake there. I did ask Justin if I could place the models, and he said that I couldn't. Fair play is fair play. I did respond to this with, are you sure that's what you want to do? Are you sure that's how you want the game to go? And he said that it was. And I sort of demonstrated to him that being a little bit of a less experienced player than I am, what happens when you want to play the game without the contract of intent. He made a couple of movement mistakes, which I held him to during the course of the game, including forgetting to fall back with a unit, which locked my Plague Bearers in combat with him for an additional turn. Probably the most glorious way to win the game after making a mistake like that was I was holding 3 of the 4 objectives. I had a Demon Prince on his 4th one, and in his last turn of the game, he advanced the Squad of Guardsmen up onto that objective with Obsec, so obviously he held it. Then charged me with his Commissar. Didn't hit me in base to base, so my Demon Prince heroically intervened into the Squad of Guardsmen that moved up next to him. Swung against the Guardsmen, killed the entire unit, or the 5 that were left, and took his Obsec unit off the objective. So in the end, Justin didn't hold an objective on his last turn, and I managed to win the game 26-25. It was a really good spot about it. We had a big discussion about it after the game. There's definitely no hard feelings. I look forward to playing him again, but hopefully in a bit more of a relaxed atmosphere than the game that we had round 3 at Wintercon.
Matt managed to drop his first 4 opponents before hitting an absolute wall that is Liam Hackett. Many of you have probably heard us talk about Liam before. He's
my boy.
Yeah, your boy. He's come close a few times to winning events and has pulled out a few himself. He loves to play his orcs with a good 20 mega knobs flopping around, and he's kept to the list even after the nerf to the mob up rule. Matt and Liam know each other very well. They're, I believe, both on the Team Australia team for ETC, and this was a matchup that Matt really wasn't looking forward to.
I went into Game 5 resigned to the fact that I was probably going to lose. Liam is also on the Australian ETC team. He's a very, very good player. And because of this, we've sort of spent a lot of time picking each other's lists apart. The consensus was that he was probably favoured to take the game out unless a few things went my way. The stream table was fortunately very heavy on terrain, which definitely helped to swing the game into my favour. I also managed to get the first turn, which was very big. I Dark Matter Crystal the Zangors up in his face. I killed 40 of the 90 Grots and tied a bunch more up and really boxed him into his deployment zone. The Zangors died. Liam jumped the shock attack gun up and killed Araman. I actually took Kingslayer on the Relic shock attack gun so that if he tried to do that, I'd be able to get the 3 secondary points in retaliation, which I did quite quickly. The Bloodletters and Horrors deep struck in. The Horrors killed his engineer unit of Grots after the Zangors had already killed his first engineer unit of Grots. This was a 4-point swing because he couldn't score any points for engineers after I went first. The Bloodletters also killed 8 of the 10 Mega Knobs and the entire unit of Tank Busters, which was a very big swing in my favour there as well. This essentially left Liam playing with 10 Mega Knobs, the Looters, and a bunch of characters against most of my army. I also rolled very fortunately 2 1s in a row on a unit of Bloodletters and brought 9 of them back over 2 different turns. The game really slowed down from this point. Became a bit of a grind. Liam sent a unit of Mega Knobs to the other half, the unused half of the board, where they managed to kill my Plague Bearers and my Horrors and take control of that. He was getting hold more every turn, but I was over in the other corner of the board farming his remaining units of Grots and characters and other small units getting kill more every turn. Managed to run out winner 28-24 in what was a very, very strategic and technical game, and one that I really enjoyed playing.
Matt wasn't the only undefeated player at WinterCon this year. He just was the one that also accrued the most VP over the course of the event. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the other 2 top performers, Christopher Wright and Kieran Howard. Val, did you want another go at reading a list, or would you like a professional to do this one for you?
I'm going to smash it.
Give her.
Here we go. Christopher Wright's list at WinterCon. He had a battalion detachment of Astra Militarum. The regiment was Cadium, and this is the Emperor's Fist Hand Company coming at you hot. He had a Knight Commander Pask. He had a Tank Commander with a Battle Cannon, and he had a Company Commander. And then he had 3 units of infantry squads. And then he had 3 units of heavy weapons support squads with 3 mortars. Coming after that, he had a battalion detachment. This time, though, he throws us a curveball. It's a regiment of Vostroyans. However, it is also led by a tank commander, and another tank commander, and a company commander. All these ones have Punisher Gatling cannons, 3 units of infantry squads, an elite squad, an astropath, and a unit of 7 Bulgrin, 3 with brute shields, and 4 with the slab shields. And then finally, he rounded it all out with a spearhead detachment of the AdMech under the Styges 8 banner. That was led by a Tech Priest Engineer. And hey, look at this. Our first appearance on the show, 3 Scorpius Disintegrators with the Belarus Energy Cannon, 3 Cognis Heavy Stubbers, Disruptor Missile Launcher, and Broad Spectrum Data Tether. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, and spoiler alert, those won't be the last Scorpius Disintegrators that we see tonight.
I love those stupid little things.
They're just awesome.
So why don't you show me how it's done with Kieran's list, or do you care?
Oh, well, you know what? I do care. Kieran Howard, he ran a Supreme Command Detachment, Slanesh, with 3 Keepers of Secrets, 1 Shalaxai Hellbane, and the Contorted Epitome. He then had an Alpha Legion Vanguard Detachment with a Chaos Lord with Jump Pack, and Chainsword, as well as the Talisman of Burning Blood and a Thunderhammer. His elite slots were filled with 2 Foul Bladespawn and the Tallyman. And finally, he had a Supreme Command detachment of Alpha Legion with 3 Lord Discordants, all of them rocking autocannons.
All right, that's fairly smooth. I'd have to give you that.
When you read a couple hundred lists a day, comes with the trade.
Kind of can see what's coming. Although maybe you wouldn't in this list. 3 Keepers of Secrets?
It's absolutely frickin' bonkers. And in talking to a couple Chaos players, they were very interested in seeing how Kieran made this list work. Because really, it's just a threat overload. You have those 3 Hellstalkers with the 5, essentially, Keepers of Secrets, if you count the Contorted Epitome as one, that are rushing up the board in your face, and they can all blend pretty well.
The Australian meta reminds me a lot of the West Coast meta in the United States, in the sense that weird stuff seems to work there. I don't know if they've embraced fully enclosed ruins or what it is, but it's pretty cool, the lists that come out of there. And shout out one more time to my pal Liam Hackett for rocking those Mega Knobs. He didn't break a sweat when you couldn't mob up Mega Knobs. In fact, he claimed he didn't even like to do it, mate. So there you go.
What a friggin' legend.
He's a legend.
Let's cut to a little bit here on Christopher, because he's no stranger to top tables, and it should be no surprise that he shows up in these lists yet again. Recently, he's had success with Deathwatch, Pre-Fac, and a series of Eldar lists post-Fac, winning a couple events and having 2 or 3 top 4s as well. So we asked him why he made the move to this primary guard tank commander list.
You sure? We did that?
Well, unfortunately, folks, it looks like the clips that were provided by Chris got interfered by something in the warp, so we're not really going to be able to provide you the in-depth insight that he was able to give us. While Matt did have some rough matchups on his way to be 5-0, Chris was not to be outdone. In fact, in his final matchup, he had to go up against Eric Lathuris, a man that had not been defeated in Australian events in something close to a year. But luckily for Chris, he did manage to pull it out in what I'm told was quite the nail-biter, slowly but surely picking off Eric's Tyranid list and managing to claim a victory there and go undefeated at the event. Lastly, we did try to get some deep insights from Kieran Howard on these Keepers of Secrets.
The Eric?
Yes, the Eric, the man who won with Grey Knights.
The man who won with Eric Lathuris.
Yes, Lathuris.
Yes, continue with your actually serious coverage.
So we tried to get some deep insights from Kieran Howard on how he managed to pull off such a great performance. And his strategic analysis really did not disappoint. In fact, I believe I'm quoting him word for word when I say, well, when I went up against the Tyranids and every other faction, all I did was move my Slanesh demons up and kill them.
That's deep.
And that's all we have for you from WinterCon. So let's hit that bump.
Tournament news.
Hey everybody, I'm Paul Murphy from Forge the Narrative, and you're listening to 40k Stat Center.
From the belly button of Australia, we travel to Kansas, where we came yet another event closer to crowning a new Lord Commissioner at the Show Me Showdown in Missouri. The Showdown attracted 66 players and 11 misguided peeping toms this year for its annual charity event, and T.O. Nathan Martin was happy to supply us with all the details we could ever desire on how it went down.
Hey, Nathan Martin here from the Show Me Showdown Grand Tournament. The Show Me Showdown, we are in our second year, and we hit our ITC Major status this year. We had 68 players. It was a great event. It's held at Staley High School in Kansas City, Missouri. We run the event to raise money for Future Business Leaders of America, FBLA, and DECA, the entrepreneurship program. These are student organizations, and they help students, go kind of achieve their business aspirations for going into college, things like that. And every year, the students need money to attend state and national competitions and international competitions. And the burden is typically on the parents. The school can help some, but, we try to do as much as we can. And this year, I'm excited to say that we raised around $2,000 to these programs, which is amazing. I can't thank the attendees and everyone who watched it on the Twitch stream and donated either online or in person. So thanks very much.
Nathan was definitely happy to report that there were almost no code of conduct issues at the event, and that was with literally every table from top to bottom being put on a chess clock.
Now, I would like to pause here and actually have him share his thoughts on the chess clocks, because it's still contentious. We had a lot of chess clocks available at TGX, but not a lot of usage, and I want to see what he thought about actually just making everyone dive into them.
One pretty unique thing I'd say to our event this year from a chess clock perspective is that we actually had every single table on a chess clock, even our bottom tables. Chess clocks aren't new, so this isn't, a big giant news story necessarily, but it is new in that we forced every table for all 5 games to be on chess clocks, regardless of your standings. So there was a little bit of growing pains, I think, from that. I personally think that the chess clocks are amazing. I think they're very, very valuable to the game. I think that it's probably going to get to be put in, in place as a regular thing at every event. I know that some of the, really huge events, 200 plus person events, it maybe can become a bit cumbersome, but it was positive. We had virtually 0 chess clock rules. So that was a big bonus for us.
So as can be expected for an event with such a fantastic following, a number of big boys came out to play, including the eventual winners, Matt Darn Tootin' Rut and Cool Ranch Ben Cheerwine. Cheerwine?
Cheerwine. Cheerwinny.
Cheerwine. All the big bad lists made showings, including Eldar Flyers, Lord Discordance, and the Triple Caladius. Matt had some great things to say about the event and the TO.
The event was fantastic, very well done, and I was really pleased with all aspects of it, really. One thing I definitely want to point out is the terrain, which had some of the best terrain I had ever seen. I really appreciated the fact that several tournaments from the Midwest had actually worked together to bring a whole bunch of terrain to the event so that all tables had excellent coverage. Kind of the big L's that you see at Nova. There were several line of sight blocking things, nice and tall ruins, and not really like small hills or anything else like that like you sometimes see at tournaments. Beyond that, the event was also really well run by a guy named Nathan Martin. All the proceeds went to a charity, and the charity was to Future Business Leaders of America at the high school. So it was for a good cause. It was well organized. We had nice 3-hour rounds for each of the games, and I have nothing bad to say about the tournament. The prize support was great. They had tons of door prizes. It was just really well done. I really highly recommend it. It's one of 3 tournaments in the Midwest that actually kind of does a similar sort of volunteer thing. The other one's being Bug Eater, which raises for a debate team proceeds, and then Iron Halo, which raises money for a local kind of anti-drug religious group of kids support group sort of thing, like a club.
2 big takeaways from that for me. One, he really sounds like Philip Seymour Hoffman. Don't you agree?
100%.
And secondly, why aren't we just using every high school gymnasium on the planet and just like selling Girl Guide cookies at the same time? We could have GTs in every town everywhere.
I mean, you're 100% correct. It's the one thing that I try to push on anybody I'm talking to that's trying to set up their own event is just go to the local high school. They don't know what to do with their gym.
This is insane. I can't believe this has never occurred to anyone other than a bunch of people in the Midwest. This is brilliant. Okay.
So to get back on topic, Matt did take the road less traveled. He dropped his orcs that he's been playing, since early this year, and moved fully behind Gene Stealer cults, which he first pulled out for the Bug Eater GT. Val, did you want to take a shot at this list, or do you want me to go at it again?
Take another swing at it. We got Matt Root at the Show Me Showdown. Here we go. He was rocking the Gene Stealer cult battalion detachment, Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. It was a specialist detachment. The Deliverance Brood Surge was led by an Acolyte Icon Ward and a Primus. He had 3 units of Acolyte hybrids with 4 heavy rock saws in each, and make that 5. With 4 heavy rock saws in each. In the elite slot, we had a Clamovis, a Kellermorph, and a Nexos. And that was combined with a battalion detachment of Tyranids, Gene Stealer cults, shocker. It was a mixed detachment. We had a Magus and a Patriarch leading it. The Magus was Bladed Cog, and the Patriarch was Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. In the troops section, we had a unit of 20 Acolyte hybrids with Hand Flamers, as well as 2 Brood Brothers infantry squads. Under the fast attack, we had our pals, the Attilan Jackals. Looks to me like there was 6 of them?
Sank.
5 of them with the demo charges. And then finally, we have one last battalion detachment. He hints at this later. It's an Astra Militarum Brood Brother detachment. 2 tank commanders leading it with las cannon and plasma cannons, and a turret-mounted executioner plasma cannon. What? 3 troops of infantry, 3 infantry squads supporting those guys. Executioner plasma cannons.
Yeah, it's something you see occasionally, but usually not at the top end of the lists. And just one quick correction for the folks out there. It was 4 squads of Acolyte hybrids with 5 rock saws in each.
Touché, salesman.
So my general strategy for those units is that the tank commanders are there essentially to get a turn 1 kill. If they live beyond turn 1 or contribute to something beyond turn 1, fantastic. That's all very helpful. Sometimes they're not the most useful things in the world, but 90% of the time they are fantastic. The rock saws, I like rock saws and acolytes more than I like aberrants. I know other people enjoy the aberrants, but I find aberrants to be a liability because they are still easy to kill, they are not objective secured, and they struggle sometimes at killing vehicles, whereas rock saws really don't. And they're more bodies which allow you to surround more things, and you can play around with several more tricks by having more bodies. So as for an MVP of the list, everything... So my general strength, and they're more bodies which allow you to surround more things, and you can play around with several more tricks by having more bodies. So that was the reason for those, for getting the executioners and for getting more rocksaw acolytes over aberrant. As for an MVP of the list, everything in my list kind of has its own purpose, and MVP really changes from game to game. If I had to give you a consistent MVP, it would probably be the Acolytes. They do most of the heavy lifting almost in every game. There's not been a single game where I was like, well, there's no reason to carry these. But Kellermorph has been amazing. Some games, other games, it's the 5-man demo charge, bike squad. Other games, it could be the tank commanders themselves. There's a ton of really useful units in that list that really like to carry their weight. Carry their weight, rather.
Philip Seymour Rutt, another big fan of the rock saw.
For sure. He absolutely loves it. In fact, if you listen closely, you can kind of hear a lot of the same tones that you got out of Stephen Four when he's talked up his Gene Stealer cult list time and time again.
Now, Matt had a pretty rough matchup in his final game of Showdown, playing into Scott Thompson's Triple Caladius Telemon Imperium list. Now, Mr. Falcon, you talk a lot of garbage when it comes to reading lists. Why don't you try tangling with this one?
For sure. So Scott Thompson, he ran a Adeptus Custodes Spearhead Detachment with Captain General Trajan Valoris, a Contemptor Achilles Dreadnought, a Vexillus Praetor with the Vexilla Magnifica, 2 Palace Grav Attack tanks, 3 Caladius Grav tanks with the twin Iliastus Accelerator Cannons, a Telemann Heavy Dreadnought with dual Arachnus Storm Cannons, and a Graia Battalion with 2 Tech Priest Engine Seers, 3 units of 5 Skitarii Rangers, 2 units of 6 Skitarii Rangers, 1 with a sniper rifle, and 1 unit of 5. And finally, he had an Officio Assassinorum Vanguard detachment with a Calidus, an Eversor, and a Vindicare.
Every single word you just said was extra dumb. And why don't we go over to Scott? So the Omaha native was more than happy to let us in on his recipe for success after getting to 4-0.
So talking about my list, I've ran the Caladius a few times in tournaments, and I've done fairly well, but there are a couple matchups before this current version of the list that it still wasn't doing enough. Offensively, they're great, obviously, but they running up against like a Castellan, they can still be killed pretty easily. They're probably a little bit undercosted. I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 points more would probably be fair. Much more than that, and they may be too much. Telemon is an excellent vehicle for killing anything without an invul, any vehicle without an invul. It's also pretty good against hordes, being that the 12 shots are -2. The Achilles is kind of something no one expected, I think. And as far as an MVP, with the exception of the game against Matt, it was probably my MVP because no one knew what it was. And for 140 points, being able to just deep strike it wherever I want and cause havoc was sort of fun. And also the assassins tended to help out and help me get points in most of the games as well. They aren't super killy now because a lot more folks are running vehicle heavy lists and they don't do much against them. But they can still hide and get me recon and whatever. But yeah, they were pretty good. But the Achilles definitely was the kind of ace in the hole. Everyone knew what everything else did pretty much except for that.
So Scott would tell us later that this game that he had against Matt was an interesting one. And in hindsight, he wished he had chosen to go second, as Matt played so craftily, it was hard for him to keep up. Let's hear Matt's words on his strategy going into the game and really just about the game itself, because I believe he puts it rather succinctly.
Over to Philip Seymour Matthew.
Scott was running the Caladiuses, and Caladiuses are a bit of a rough matchup just because of the way they can deploy on ruins and the way that they can be -2 to be charged. They are nearly unassaultable. Furthermore, they're really damn hard to kill. Like the tank commander versus Caladius shooting is a joke. Like it's far more efficient to take a Caladius point wise for shooting than it is to take a tank commander. And so trying to do that, it's a losing battle. So I don't have a lot of really good shooting options, and they can in 60-inch range. Those guys can just pick up anything that they shoot up. The Caladiuses do. So I expected that there would be screens and things I'd have to run into that would be trouble. Scott gave me a few opportunities, however, by leaving his troops out in the open over near objectives, and allowing me to try and get up there and surround them and using that. And so essentially my goal going into the game was not to kill any of the Caladiuses, because he has to be aggressive and come to me if I want to win the Caladiuses, unless I want to make some seriously risky charges. What instead I do want to do is try to win in things I can do. So using things like Headhunters forces him to either commit. If he wants to utilize assassins, he gives me Headhunters. If he doesn't want to use the Headhunter then that's fine. They don't have to deal with assassins. Engineers allows me to sit back on objectives. I don't have to kill anything to farm points. And then because I'm GSC, using the ground control secondary is really helpful there too. That was the reason I picked those particular secondaries. My goal was, again, not to kill everything Scott had, but to basically bleed him of points as best I could. So in that sense, it went about as well as I could, but I tried to take those opportunities to gain more points. So if I saw an opportunity to get a kill and to hold more objectives, I took it by making charges and moving up to try and grab stuff on objectives and just trying myself up in combat. And from there, it was just slowly picking points as best I could from turn to turn. By bringing out my acolytes one squad at a time, this allowed me to do it over the course of 6 hours. I think more so than anything, it was the opportunities to make those charges and send objectives that really kind of put the nail in Scott's coffin, so to speak. I can't deal with his Caladiuses. They're just too hard to kill. With the way that my army runs, I have plenty of anti-tank stuff, but he is really good at ignoring most of it. So by taking apart other pieces of his list, he gave me that opportunity by moving out his acolytes and his engineers forward and that sort of thing. So I would say somewhere around turn 2, when I saw those opportunities, I took them and started making those charges and tying stuff up, was when I felt like the game was really turning around in my favor. But it was basically a game in which every turn I was getting a couple more points than him, and at the end of the game, it just ended up with a big differential as a result of that.
You heard it here first. Matt Rudd does not care about your clocks, Nathan. 6 hours to finish that final match.
And not only that, but he absolutely bled a man dry right in front of you, and there was nothing you did about it.
Meanwhile, at the other top table of the event, we had Ben Master Geoff Sherwin and his Eldari Flyers. Ben has been putting together a long series of top performances in the last few months, and Show Me Showdown was just another in that lineup. 1 second. Ben has been putting together a long series of top performances in the last few months, and Show Me Showdown was just another in that lineup.
For sure. And what was Ben running? He had an air-wing detachment that was ally talk with 3 Crimson Hunter Exarchs and a Hemlock Wraithfighter. He then had a Cabal of the Blackheart air wing with 3 Razor-wing jet fighters. And he topped it all off with a ally talk Spearhead with a Farseer Skyrunner and 3 Night Spinners, as well as, wait for it, 3 Wave Serpents.
I mean, that was a pretty easy list to read.
You're right. I mean, there's no nonsense words like you have in a Custodes list. And, to be fair, this list only makes me want to throw up just a little.
That's right. Oh, the sadness. All right. Why don't we kick it over to Ben himself, and he can take us through this nightmare blow by blow.
Some of the lists I've been playing this season have pretty much all had a lot of tanks in them. I've been Fire Prisms, Night Spinners, Ravagers, Wave Serpents. But during the Castellan's reign, I really honestly played a lot of Harlequin bikes for that Haywire. But now with the Discordance and the Caladius roaming around, I've really had a lot of luck with the Eldar Flyers. They're -2 to hit, -3 to hit with lightning fast. That's generally where I've found a sweet spot with the current meta. It's hard to pick out a unit that really shined above the rest from my list, just because in each matchup they all had their great purposes, like Wave Serpents holding objectives. But if I had to pick one, it'd be my Farseer. But Doom is Doom. It's one of the greatest psychic powers in the game, and if you can get it off, it makes my everything just a lot better, especially Night Spinners, who need that 6 to wound to really be super effective. And he didn't die at all during the tournament, so anybody who took old school against me was automatically down a point. So that was fantastic. But if I had to pick a lame duck, that'd be my Hemlock Wraithfighter. If I just ignore the fact that his shooting was fantastic, which it always is going to be because it auto-hit strength 12, -4, 2 damage flat. That's always going to do something. It would be his casting. He got Jinx off twice the entire tournament, and I cast it like 30 times, so I was not happy with that amount of Jinx getting off. Though the one time I really needed it, it really came through, and that was a pretty big turning point when I got it off turn 1 against the Shadow Sword Knight list. allowing me to honestly just kill the knight outright first turn, putting me at a pretty good spot right away on game 5. So that was huge. But the rest of the time, he failed off his jinx, and it was super irritating because you're like, oh, well, I should get this like half the time. And nope, not from him.
Well, Ben is very well known amongst his fellows for having a peculiar basing method on his Eldar flyers. While we could try to explain it to you, we do feel it's best to let Ben describe the trials and tribulations of using real food for his bases.
Now, the Dorito bases are a funny story. So, at LVO and other ITC events, you don't necessarily need to have the flyer bases based. They can be black. But this event in particular, which is Bug Eater, which is run by one of my teammates, Tim Royers, I suddenly had a realization on our way there. I'm like, well, I might need these based. Well, this is like midnight. I'm doing this, maybe 1 a.m. And I'm like, hey, Tim, I know you're probably still setting up the event. Do I need my flyer bases? He goes, yeah, man, I'm sorry. But yeah, you do. You need something. So I was like, oh, man, I'm screwed here. So I got to figure something out. I can't play with my flyers because I know Tim. He's a hard judge. And he'll pull my models. I know that for sure. At least one of his judges will. Now I'm super tired. I'm looking for an easy way out because I just want to get it done and get it out. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll go to Walmart. That's the only thing open. And I'll get some like glitter Elmer's glue and we'll just call it a day. Well, as we walked in, there was a big wall of Doritos, and it kind of had an epiphany. I'm like, crushed up Doritos kind of looks like lava, right? And, I bet Tim would crack up if I came to his tournament with Doritos glued to my bases because I had to have them based. So, to answer the question, it takes about 7 Doritos to effectively base a flyer, and that you got to crush it up real good, otherwise it just doesn't look right. And I used the glitter Elmer's glue too, so it was glitter Doritos. The only problem with the basing is that I got them home. I had 5 of them done up and 2 of them that were painted. And when I wasn't looking, my dog ate 2 of the basings, so I had to get some GW texture paint on them for ATC. But other than that, they're kind of like a running joke now, is how long can I get these to last and how many people are going to notice that I have Doritos glued to my base. Anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This guy had Doritos to base his flyers, and then his dog ate them. We can't make this
Tournament news.
Scary here from Scardcast, and you are listening to Stats Center.
From Toronto, Canberra, and Kansas, we set sail to Caledonia, specifically Stockport, which based on our research is nowhere near Scotland for the Caledonian Revolution, ETC major event that took place at Element Games.
79 players banged plastic models together over 2 days to determine who had the right to play Braveheart in the next in a long line of Hollywood reboots, and in the end, only two stood tall and undefeated. The one and only Manny the Bat Chima and Chris the Tallyman Rayner.
Chris would end up going undefeated, but still coming up second with his devoted followers of Nurgle just couldn't eke out the battle points required to pass the Manny Bat. Still, he had a heck of a tournament, with a list that generally isn't seen much at events at such a high placing.
Did you want to give a go at this list there, Mr. Val, or did you want the pro to do it yet again?
Chris Rayner, Chaos Allegiance Nurgle in a battalion detachment of Chaos Demons. He had 2 Demon Prince of Chaos, a Sloppity Bile Piper, a unit of Nurglings, a unit of 29 Plague Bearers with a demonic icon and instrument of chaos, and then another unit, but this time 28 Plague Bearers with a demonic icon and instrument of chaos. He had a Spearhead detachment with a Demon Prince of Nurgle, and 3 Plague Burst Crawlers. Remember those guys, kids? And then finally he had a battalion detachment. Guess what? Chaos Allegiance Nurgle. This guy's going for the gold. He had Epidemius, a Poxbringer, and a Spoilpox Scrivener leading them out, and 3, count them 3, units of Nurglings.
Well, look at this little guy running his Nurgle demons up all in this place. This is the kind of list you don't see very often in the top tables. More often than not, it's right at the bottom rungs, these people that want to run their super fluffy, pure Nurgle lists. But Chris made it work.
Yeah, sometimes rocking the monofaction can get you places, and this time it was second place. Why don't we kick it on over to him, and he can talk a little bit about it.
Hey, the list itself comes from a double tournament that me and my friend went to in Birmingham. It revolves around Epidermis. So at the start, the plague bearers are pretty weak as far as doing damage is concerned, but towards the end of the game, they become not only tough but quite an effective killing machine as well. In the meantime, you're kind of reliant upon the demon princes and the Death Guard units to do the killing. For me, the MVP of the list is the Nurglings. While the Plague Bearers are moving forward with the Plague Bearers Crawlers and the Demon Princes, people are generally focusing on them. Meanwhile, the Nurglings are racking up the points at the back, and sometimes even venturing a little bit further forward or providing screens against smites, etc. I really think that the Nurglings are an underestimated unit in the list.
You know, I think a couple of weeks back, Alan, PJ Pants, trolled us a little bit by naming his runt herd as his MVP, but I think our friend Chris here is being genuine. He thinks those little Nurglings won him some games.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Their ability to scout, deploy, and cover up a lot of ground, it's really big in a lot of these lists. And I got nothing more to say. Kudos to Chris for putting on such a really awesome performance with a pure Nurgle demon, well, mostly pure Nurgle demon with a little bit of that Death Guard mixed in.
It just goes to show, not dying can win you games. Let's hear how Game 5 went for Chris.
For me, the final two games were the highlights of the tournament. The Eldar list was quite a tough matchup in a non-progressive mission. I was quite fortunate that he retreated into a corner, so I had map dominance. And then I did a slow and steady advance in true Nurgle style. And then the points just started racking up towards the end. The last game was probably the toughest. With 3 units of 25 Zangors, I just hoped that he'd send them in one at a time. So I tried to pull him in by staying on my backline, not on my backline, but in my deployment zone, and hope that by the time he came in with the majority of his force, that I killed enough stuff for the Plague Bearers to be tough enough to take it.
Yep. Big thanks once again to Chris for everything he's done. So now let's turn to the most handsome man from the Glasshammer gaming team, Manny Chima. He's had an absolutely stellar year, putting up wins and top performances with a range of armies, from his Tau victory at the Big Bristol GT to his 5-1 finish at LVO with 8-9 Smash Captains and Deathwatch, all while wearing a poorly fitted Batman costume.
Perfectly fitted.
Yeah, to each his own. Manny has definitely been putting up some solid numbers. And this time around, Manny brought out his Imperial Guard with just a little splash of Blood Angel Slam Gwyn Eye and his favorite model of all time, Mr. Big Fist.
Ah, yes, Mr. Big Fist. We'll get to him at the penultimate detachment of this army. He was rocking a Catachin Brigade detachment. Look out. We got Colonel Iron Hand Strachan, 2 company commanders. In the elite slot, we've got the underrated and lovable platoon commander with a power fist, Sergeant Harker, a Ministorum Priest, Astropath, and then, of course, 9 units of just guardsmen and balls. Finally, well, not even close to finally, 3 Scout Sentinels with the multi-laser, 3 heavy weapons teams with the mortars, and then a Catachin battalion detachment with the Emperor's Wrath Artillery Company. I may have skimmed over on the previous one. The the brigade was actually an Emperor's Conclave Infantry Company, so we're making a lot of use of Vigilus here. In the Wrath Artillery Company, we've got a company commander, we've got a Primaris Psyker, we got 3 units of 10 guardsmen, 3 wyverns, and then finally, bringing it all up in the rear, we got a Supreme Command detachment with only good stuff. We got 3 Smash Captains, one of them rocking the Relic Angelus Wings, a Librarian Dreadnought, and another Librarian Dreadnought, one of them, only one of them, carrying a comically oversized fist.
I've switched to the soup, and the reason why I switched to the soup is because I've always loved Horde. I play so many hordes. Pretty much every year at the ETC, I'm always the horde player. I just like playing with loads and loads of models. So that's one of the reasons that I haven't gone for the Castellan, and why the Castellan's not in my list, is I don't like having too many big models. And I could still get a horde in with a Castellan, but I tried in that list to not give people a big target to shoot at. I didn't want one big thing that everybody would put all of their big guns into. So, I'm not too bothered about las cannons and stuff if they're killing 3 guardsmen. But if a Castellan was my only big threat, it would go bye-bye very quickly. Yeah, quite interesting actually. This list is my ETC list, and I wasn't expecting to win the event, just because 3 of the missions have got unlimited kill points in, and my list has 35 kill points to give away. So a little bit of luck with the pairings, playing the 9 planes in a mission where, 11 planes in a mission where there was no kill points really helped, and then playing another horde player in the final round helped me as well. So that's cool, and I have explained exactly how the list works. Wyverns are there to make people come at me, because all of my big anti-tank and anti-infantry stuff is close range. I have explained everything, the synergy and how it works with all the strats and stuff in a video for elite members only. So if you want to know exactly how the list works completely, like to the full extent, become a member of the elite. Yeah, I know, looking at the 9 broadside list and then this list, all my lists are quite heavily anti-infantry, and it's not that I don't like infantry. I love infantry. I use hordes as my main lists. So but yeah, I think it's more I like to put loads and loads of anti-infantry in, but the reason why I've switched from the broadsides over to the Catachans is I like to put anti-infantry that's also infantry itself, because it gives me a massive board presence, so I can hold objectives very well, but then I can kill loads of little stuff off objectives as well. But then if big stuff tries to come close to my little stuff, then I have the 5 Blood Angel, the best of the Blood Angels sent by the Emperor himself, that I can just seem to roll unlimited 6s for when I need them. I would say probably the thing that's unique about my list is, if you look at most lists that are dominating, at least the UK meta at the moment, all the lists that are dominating there are either like Chaos Hordes with Smite Spam that operate really well in the Psychic phase, or like lists which operate really well in the combat phase, or, you can have 9 Flyers which operate really well in the shooting phase, but people know what phases exactly those lists are good at. And I think the most unique thing about my list is it has a big impact in the game in a lot of phases. Moving around with 120 dudes is powerful. Casting wings and making dreadnoughts fly and stuff, and double moving is really powerful. Wyverns shooting and also like 400 odd lasgun shots is really powerful. And my combat is awesome with Smash Captains and loads of guardsmen with 3 attacks each of strength 4. So my MVP unit has got to be Mr. Big Fist. Mr. Big Fist is my Warlord Libby Dread, but he quite famously has a Imperial Knight Fist instead of his Furioso Fist, just because he looks cool, and he punches people a lot, man. The -4 AP with the flat 4 damage is really, really good on him, especially with the reach he has with Wings of Sanguinius, and with Quickening, and I think it's called Red Rampage, whichever one gives him plus D3 attack stratagem. He puts the pain on a lot of people, and he was really good over the weekend. Made a lot of people play differently. But also, there was a Wyvern in my game with Mark Cromblehome, and my rolling is normally very lucky. Jammy Manny is like what most people call me, and that Wyvern got 24 shots, 24 hits on 4s, and 24 wounding on 5s with rerolls against Grotesques. Jammy Manny, baby. You should have seen it. Mark's face after that was just amazing. His only response was, he just looked at me with a blank face and was like, Manny, stop rolling my dice. Don't use my dice anymore.
Now, Mark Crumblehome, as you may remember, won the Warzone Man GT not but 2 weeks ago, so Manny had definitely been up against some tough players as he made his way through the Revolution, and his final match was against Tom, always on top, Higginbottom. You can thank Peter for that one. That was pretty good. Tom was a player fresh off a win at the Allies of Convenience GT just 2 weeks ago, and has been absolutely tearing up the UK scene with his style of WoW. Orcs and Catachan Guard have some absolutely knockdown, drag-out matchups, and this was no different.
My final game was a really good one. I played Tom Higginbottom, who's absolutely smashing it with Orcs in the UK at the moment. He's a really, really good player, and we've had loads of games. We play practice games with each other, and we always have a really close, good game. I think he played the Orcs a little differently to how I would have in that matchup, because it was kill points. It kind of favoured him a little bit. I would have sat back with looters and had a sort of standoff and just killed a few more guard units than I could Orc units, because either one of us only needed like a 12-8 or 13-7 win to win the event. But he went really aggressive and he just ran at me. But in one turn, he failed 2 charges, like both charges with deep strikes and stuff. So it was really bad because there were 70 boys just sitting in front of me, and I wiped them all out in one turn with like 400 lasgun shots on the combat. And then Tom just couldn't come back from that. So he had to concede in turn 4. But yeah, if played differently, it would have been really close.
That wraps up our coverage on the Caledonian Revolution. Grats, Manny. We hear you moving on to Chaos next. I hope those fickle gods do not find you wanting.
Tournament news.
I'm Lawrence Baker.
And this is the B-Bone from Tabletop Tactics.
You're listening to 40k Stat Center.
So finally, we move from a land where one revolution just ended to the land where one got its start. Richmond, Virginia, home of Patrick Henry, he of Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death, and the 5th and last major event that took place this weekend, the Battle in the Warp First Crusade. Hosted by the absolutely effervescent Warp Charged Gaming Group and Coastal Wargaming, Battle in the Warp was a 61-player major and Nova practice event held at the Battlegrounds. We were able to reach out to the Warp Charge Gaming crew, and they were more than happy to provide a thorough rundown of the event, as well as hundreds of pictures, a music video, and a Hallmark TV movie starring Tori Spelling as Gazgul Thraka. We'll link the pictures and videos to the 40k Stats Center Facebook page, but we've had to return the footage of Gaz finding out his true love was the local flower shop owner all this time. Here's what their crew had to say.
What's up, 40k Stats fans? This is George from Warp Charge Gaming. I'm here to give you a quick breakdown of the event that we threw this past weekend on July 20th and 21st. It was called the Battle in the Warp First Crusade, hosted by Warp Charge Gaming and Coastal Wargaming. Warp Charge Gaming, we're an online entertainment media company based around tabletop wargaming, featuring Age of Sigmar, 40k, and Kill Team, and we do tournaments every month for all 3 of these game systems and stream them live. We are based out of the game store Battlegrounds in Midlothian, VA, where we host all of our events. This event that Coastal Wargaming and Warp Charge put together this past weekend was a milestone event for us, as it was our first 40k major tournament, having 58 plus people over 5 rounds. It was a 2-day event where we had people from all over the East Coast and more come to our event. We had friends from Chicago, had a buddy visiting from New Zealand that made it out, and we had people all the way from Pennsylvania down to North Carolina. This event was in preparation for the 10th year anniversary of Nova Open 2019, and we were using their format. Due to the timeline of the Chaos Knight Codex dropping, we did not allow that at our event, polled per our event attendees. At the event, 100% of the entry fees went into the prize support. We gave out over $3,000 in prizes, in-store credit for Battlegrounds, and every attendee got a set of 6 custom objective markers. Coastal Wargaming brought 32 tables of terrain, the exact same terrain they've been volunteered for at Nova Open. They wanted to expand the number of players that they could accommodate, as it sold out faster than it ever has before in record numbers this year. And Coastal Wargaming, with their excellent ITC terrain that matches the mats, will be providing that for Nova Open. So we actually got to play on the terrain that will be at the event of the big major itself. So it was a great primer for our attendees. We did first, second, and then not to be doubled up with best in faction for Imperium, Chaos, and Xenos. So that was kind of your top 5 picks there. We also did every 16 players would be a top 16. So we did 17th, 33rd, and 49th out of the 64 player capacity, as well as best painted and rule of cool. We had some fantastic armies there, some amazing talented players, as well as people that were just getting their feet wet and diving into the tournament scene. Warp Charge Gaming and Coastal Wargaming are 2 different crews from a couple hours away that really share the same values of taking fun seriously, the motto of Warp Charge, and really have made friends over this past year as we've both thrown some excellent events as time's gone on. This was the kickoff to our season 2 of our tournament league. We just did season 1 for the first half of the year, had 6 tournaments with the top 3 scores of those 6 tournaments going to an overall grand prize, which we actually gave away a painting commission voucher to Dark Money Creatives this past round. We kicked off season 2 with this big major event that we were extremely proud of. If you guys want to go check out on Twitch or YouTube, you can catch each of the 5 rounds. We put up the top table on the stream there, and you're able to watch all the battles back, including the last 2 rounds, which are where the most intense of the competition lied for these top spots. First place walked away with practically a new army of $600 in prize support, $400 for second. Each of the best in factions got $250. So I know there was a lot of stoked winners. We also gave away $100 giveaways throughout the entire event. So it was extremely classy, top notch. We put our all into it and really had a memorable experience that I think will go down in our history on a local level. We plan to continue to expand and grow these events and want to be a major player in the community as far as pushing us forward and reaching newer and higher bars of what is a great tournament. If you're ever in the East Coast area or see the Warp Charge Gaming Coastal Wargaming name on an event, know that we take a lot of pride in providing the best experience possible, and we'll make no exception to making sure that our attendees have a fantastic time. So I hope you guys enjoy the stats and you check out some of the videos of the bat reps. Love to hear from you. Holler with any additional questions you might have. Follow us on Best Coast Pairing to continue to see more great stats being posted from our events in the months to come. Keep taking fun seriously.
Battle in the Warp had a spicy field with 8 of the 61 players representing the greater good, 3 of which ended up in the top 4. The final matchup would see a Tau mirror match with Michael Agner going up against Chris Stover, the man that stopped Austin Wingfield in his tracks in the first round of the event. I'll do one, you do the other. Here we go. Mike Agner, this is the eventual winner. We've got a battalion detachment of Tau Sept. It was rocking a commander in a Enforcer battle suit with my favorite 4 cyclic ion blasters, Dark Strider. He had 3 units of 5 Fire Warriors. He had 3 units of shield drones with 2 marker drones in each unit as well. He had a heavy support broadside battle suits unit with 3 of them, of course, rocking the high yield missile pods and advanced targeting system, and bringing along 5 of their shield drone buddies. Then he had a Vanguard detachment of the Sisea Sept with an Ethereal on a hover drone, 3 Firesight marksmen. Finally, we had a Vanguard detachment of the Tau Sept with another 3 cyclic ion blaster Enforcer battle suit with a drone controller, which can only mean one thing, and I'm wrong because it's not sniper drones. It means 3 elites of the Riptide Persuasion, 2 smart missile systems, advanced targeting system, and target lock. So these are the mobile guys. They can move, they can shoot. They're pretty fun.
For sure. And in third place, his opponent, Chris Stover, who ran a Tau Sept brigade with a Cadre Fireblade, tagging on 2 extra shield drones, a Cold Star commander with 3 fusion blasters, a shield generator, and 2 shield drones, and Dark Strider. He also had 6 minimum 5-man Fire Warrior squads, 2 Firesight marksmen, and a Riptide with heavy burst cannon and a velocity tracker, as well as advanced targeting system. He had 3 units of 4 shield drones, 2 units of 3 sniper drones, 3 broadsides with high yield missile pods, smart missiles, and advanced targeting systems. And then he had a Dalith Tau battalion.
What?
I know. In which he ran a Cadre Fireblade, another Cold Star, once again with triple fusion blasters and a shield generator. He had another 3 minimum 5-man Fire Warrior squads, and a Sassia Sept patrol with a Cadre Fireblade, a 3rd Cold Star commander with fusion blasters, an Ethereal, and a Firesight marksman. I believe there's a mistake here, and that patrol is probably actually a Supreme Command detachment when I look at it.
Well, there you go. Cue them up. Let's get the torches and pitchforks. We got a little list error.
What are we going to do about it?
Is it, though? Yeah, you're right. It's got the elite. I don't know. We better slander this person's otherwise good name everywhere we can find for a very minor miscalculation in their list.
Particularly given that if he did play it this way, it actually hurt him because it left him with one less CP for no reason.
For no reasons.
It took us a while, but we were eventually able to reach Michael after a long trek through forgotten parts of the internet. Multiple contacts with players in his area. It involved digging through a series of pseudonyms, several dead ends and false flags, and the first 14 pages of the now trending page on Pornhub. Michael was kind enough to give us a brief rundown of his thoughts on the event. If you're looking for something a little more thorough, we do recommend you check out Next Rung Gaming on YouTube, because Michael did do a pretty extensive interview on the event itself and on all his games that took place. One thing Michael wanted to say was that the event was great. It was his first time going to one of the Warp Charge gaming tournaments, but he felt that the venue had plenty of space and that the terrain was awesome. When you look at the pictures later, you'll be able to see it really is a fantastic venue by the looks of things. His MVPs were his drones. They always screened very well for him, and his savior protocols were clutch. If they happened to survive to the late game, they were excellent for holding objectives. And his toughest matchup was definitely his round 4 against Ted Cantu. 3 big things helped him that game, which were A, Ted decided that the Tau player should go first. And turn 1, he forgot to advance a unit of Shining Spears, so he was able to outrange them with a Riptide, and that actually caused him to basically pull ahead in the game. And he finalized it in the last round when one of his commanders decided to roll hot and not die when Ted's Rangers came a-hunting. And that's it. That's all he really had to say. Unfortunately, because it took us a while to find Michael, we weren't able to get a really good audio from him. Like I said, feel free to check out the podcast, and you'll get a good, clear idea of just how he played through those games. And that's all we've got. So let's get another bump.
And I've run out of new bumps.
Tournament news.
Hey guys, this is Nick Nanavati from Knights of the Game Table Pro, where I teach you how to become a better 40k player. And you're listening to 40k Stat Center.
Oh, thank goodness. We finished the majors. I guess the show's over.
Yeah, there's nothing else to say here.
Oh, wait, there's still 3 GTs. From major play to GT-sized events, we travel back across the pond for the Summer Hull GT, a 36-player ITC event hosted by the Hull's Angels, and the second in a trio of GTs planned for the area this year. What was most impressive about the Summer Hull GT was that, once again, a pure Grey Knights list actually made it to the top table, though it did not win. It is always a pleasure to see some of the more maligned codexes have their day. While we could not reach Karen in time to talk about their lists, we were able to reach out to the eventual winner of the event, Ben Tilford, for some insight on how the event went down.
My name's Ben Tilford. I'm actually Canadian, but I've lived in the UK forever. I play everyone's favourites, Tau, Eldar, and Dark Eldar. I've been playing again for about 2 years, a year competitively, a bit longer maybe. I used to play as a kid on and off through to my 20s, but I quit when I went to uni. Hull GTs are the best. The trains are great with the right mix of line of sight blocking and scatter stuff. And after hard days battling, it's off to Spiders for a few dirty Tizers. James and Mark are really well organised. I can't actually recall any delays aside from myself turning up late more than once. All the Hull boys are super friendly, and they definitely have the right balance between competitive and social play at their tourneys. There's no real secret to my list. Basically, if you nuke the Grots, the rest will nuke you. If you wreck the Ravagers and the Crimson Hunters, the Grots will get there and batter you. My MVP was definitely the Hemo with the Helm of Spite. I just waited for low rolls on psychic tests, denied, and got some free mortals. Even in my second game, stopped a jinx and killed a warlock, which was hilarious.
Okay. So now Ben did have a couple of hard matchups prior to the finals, going up against some sticky chaos multi-faction shenanigans that almost took him down before facing off against the Brothers of Titan. Let's hear what he has to say about his day 2 matchups.
The second day games 4 and 5 were tough, but that was self-inflicted after one too many beers the night before. My toughest game was versus Greg in his Chaos list. After turn 2, and they had a single unit of Grots left, and they were about to get Death Hexed for a third time, but he actually failed it, and he burnt through all his CPs. It was basically giving me the break I needed to push forward hard. I still had the 3 Ravagers and 2 Crimson Hunters that he basically just couldn't touch, so I used them to whittle down the Screamers and the Cultists. Then the remaining Grots battered the remaining Plague Bearers, so I just played the objectives and my secondaries. The funniest part of that game was charging Urian into a Demon Prince to stop Greg charging my racks on the centre objective. Urian tanked it, but then the Prince jumped over, rolled a Super Smite and wiped the racks anyways in his turn. My last game versus Kyrian's Grey Knights was a good game, but I was really hanging at this point. You give me first turn, which basically just let me deal with the dreads as they were the biggest threats to my flyers. As expected, he put most of his stuff in reserve or hid it out of line of sight, so I just pushed up to the centre of the board and screened out my shooty stuff from the incoming Grandmaster Dread Knights and all their support. After they dropped in, I brought in my 3rd unit of Grots that I put in reserve to charge and slow down his Dread Knights, but they failed the charge. I didn't pass a single charge from deep striking Grots for the 2 days. The Grandmasters then charged the Grots in his fight phase and bounced off them, thanks to the 4-up invuln on the Grots and the 6-up ignore wounds. This then let me charge in the remaining of my Grots with Urian hiding the building, and his buff +1 strength lets me wound the Grandmasters on 4s, and Grots just have a ridiculous amount of attacks, so it didn't really take long to start bringing them down. The game ended up with a tabling, but I think if Kyrian had brought anything but Grey Knights, it would have been a bit more of a game. All in all, the weekend was cool. I really enjoyed it. This was my first GT win, so I was obviously over the moon about that, and can't wait for my next tourney.
Thanks, Ben. Hopefully the light of life finds your eyes and you find joy once again. Let's get another bump.
Tournament news.
Hey, Big Nasty B and RoboEd from Life of the Cover Save Comedy Games podcast, and you're listening to 40k Stat Center. It's kind of cool, I guess.
Warhammer, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the HMS Stat Center, whose mission is to seek out new events, to bring you their players, and boldly go where no podcast had gone before.
And this time it's Alaska. Sure, there are podcasts out there, but they're mostly just a bunch of white guys yelling at clouds and drinking Four Loko. And even though we do listen to the Mob Rules podcast religiously because they're good chaps, it does say something about them that they thought Falcon was my actual real name.
But enough about them. We're here to talk up the Midnight Sun GT, a 32-player event held in Palmer, Alaska, a place so cold and covered in smoke that it reminds the Falcon a little too much of home. We reached out to Rob Porter about the event.
Hey guys, this is Rob Porter reporting back from the Midnight Sun GT, taking first place with Pure AdMech. How was the event itself? What was the table and terrain quality like? and the venue. I'm going to be a little biased because I did help with the event organizing, but was not involved with the TOing or any of the official rulings. But the tables were dispersed pretty well inside of the venue. There was plenty of room to walk around, set your army down. Terrain was evenly dispersed. There was plenty of ruins and craters and barricades across the tables. So that being said, it worked out really well. The venue had applicable parking, bathrooms, and space to move, though it was a little inconvenient because it did get pretty hot in there, but Alaska's going through a heat wave, so that was not avoidable.
All the big Alaskan 40K personalities were in attendance, like the aforementioned Rob Porter, Danny McDevitt, and a small bird with psoriasis. The event would go down as a big one for Rob as he managed to pull off a very solid victory with a pure Cult Mechanicus army. With a monofaction Cult Mechanicus army. Do you want to say all the dumb words in this one?
Rob Porter, he brought with him a Cult Mechanicus battalion that was Mars with a Servitor Maniple Vigilist detachment. He had Belisarius Call, a Tech Priest Engineer, 3 units of 5 Cataphron Breachers with arc rifles and hydraulic claws, a squad of 10 Corpuscari Electro Priests, 2 Onager Dune Crawlers with Icarus arrays, a Terax Pattern Assault Drill, and then a second Mars battalion, this time with a Tech Priest Manipulus, another Engineer, 3 units of 7 Scutari Rangers, with 2 Transuranic Arquebuses in each, a squad of 9 Sakaran Infiltrators, and 3 of those fantastic brand new state-of-the-art Scorpius Disintegrators.
Ooh, baby. Let's see what Rob had to say about those.
Key strategies of my list is really investing in the durability of the Adeptus Mechanicus, toppled by the rerolls from Call and the synergy with the Manipulus and a lot of their stratagems, to create a screen with breachers that it's really tough for a lot of people to break through. So, and using that buffer to allow the rest of the gun line that's mobile to shift around across my side of the board to get in good positions for firing and just completely capitalize on it, while throwing units like the Corpuscari and the Infiltrators either mid-board or on the backside of the enemy's deployment zone to keep pressure on to where it's hard to prioritize where the firepower needs to be, and allowing me to spread across and go for mid-board. My list MVP and how did they make a difference for you? Really, like on a match-by-match basis, each game had its own MVP unit. So I wouldn't say that there was one unit in particular that was just the overarching best unit. That being said, I think the Scorpiuses were the most reliable out of all my games. But there were a few games where like the Infiltrators really swung it for me. The Corpuscari really swung it for me. The Breachers held their own really well. The Onagers were knocking out flyers. I mean, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. Everything synergized really well, and that's kind of what to expect from a call list. It's just a call star that walks around and shoots at everything. But the Scorpiuses, I think, really shine the most. To me, they did. They're just a new dynamic to the whole function of that is Mechanicum. Round 4 match with Triple Crass Crusader, played by our local Matt Morse, was a very interesting game. That mission was, I believe, mission number 6, where it's the I go, you go for deployment and going first. So I got to deploy first. I deployed superly aggressive, and he seized on me. So I was essentially looking at the table going, well, hell, I guess I'm just going to die. I'll hang on tight then. Oddly enough, he hit with a lot of shots. He didn't wound with as many of them. I was able to make a lot of saves. I only lost like 5 breachers and was able to retaliate. And by the bottom of turn 2, 2 knights were off the board. So I think that game was more or less a matter of him having a hard time with target priority and where to focus his knights on, and me just able to just pressure on with mortal wounds. I will make a mention here that the Infiltrator showing up did 14 wounds to the knight, so that was huge. Final match against Coulson and his Necrons was a good game. It was a hard-fought one. The terrain and everything was fine on the table. We deployed up via Vanguard. This mission was precious cargo. We did the usual, I'm going to move my objective back to my corner, and then he went first. Fortunately for me, I'm used to playing against this kind of list. I've had some practice games with another local player, Danny McDevitt, who's from the Mob Rules podcast, and I know what he was trying to do with getting the mortal wounds off and all the Tesla. So I fanned out as best as I could and only gave him like one good target for his strat to go off, which he did use and killed about 3 or 4 breachers. But then when I retaliated, I shot down all of his flyers. The biggest thing about this game that really hurt him the most was that his Doomsday Arcs just did not perform. They did not hit. And then when I started putting the Corpus Scari in and the Infiltrators in and started just popping off mortal wound bombs like crazy, that really turned the game for him about turn 3.
Well played, Rob. Keep up the great work in the name of the Omnissiah. Let's cut to the bomb.
Tournament news.
Hey everybody, I'm Paul Murphy from Forge the Narrative, and you're listening to 40k Stat Center.
And here we have it, the finale of the 400 events that we had to cover this week. The Central Valley Showdown was a 31-player ITC event run at the actual Gates of Hell themselves in Hanford, California.
Run by the Warhammer 40k team and T.O'd by fighter jet pilot Paul Bowman, Central Valley was a real mix of Northern California sharks and baby seals ready to be clubbed into oblivion. That's pretty graphic. Players like our very own Michael the Glock Timpy, Tony Hammerhead Myers, and Jessica No Battle Cannon Needed Bowman brought even more heat to a 110-degree weekend. I'm sweating just thinking about it. And no, Aurelio, no one forgot to include their Vigilist detachment in their list, so calm yourself and have a Long Island iced tea or something. It is the drink of champions. In what may come as a surprise, 2 of the top 4 players at the event, including the eventual winner, ran Necrons. 40k Stats Center correspondent Michael Timpe came in 4th place, being outclassed and outgunned by a man who refers to himself as the Guppy of the NorCal scene, Ulyss Adam Sanders.
So, Ulyss Sanders showed up to the Central Valley Showdown with an Air Wing detachment, SOTEC, 3 Doomsize, an Outrider detachment of SOTEC with a Cryptek, a unit of 6 Destroyers, 5 regular variety, and 1 heavy, a squad of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Tomb Blades, and then another squad of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Tomb Blades. And finally, he had a Spearhead detachment, also SOTEC, with Imhotep the Stormlord and 3 Doomsday Arcs. This is a list that we're seeing more and more regularly show up in the top echelons of 40k tournament scene. Necrons have really been exploding out of the gates. Unfortunately, they seem to all be running this almost exact template with just a few points moved here and there. So I'm not sure how long this will last before people finally figure out what to do against them. I'm interested to see it because I love the fact that a faction that for so long had been kind of pushed to the wayside as one of the worst has started a rise to being one of the best.
And I'm just happy that people are as dedicated to their faction as you were to that terrible count joke. Now, Ulyss wanted to not only talk about his list performance, but also Necrons as a whole in the current meta. Let's hear what he had to say.
I think when people think of Necrons, they still think of Necrons in November 2018. We've come a long way since then, and some of our toughest matchups, specifically the Castellan and Yannari Dark Reapers, they've taken a hit. And in their absence, we've grown stronger. I also think the Necron community is one of the better ones out there, so good ideas spread quickly. We benefit from having very few hard counters. And those that do, we play very strong in the first turn and long tables. So even if we're outclassed or outskilled, we've seen the meta shift a lot in the last 6 months, but most have been in our favor. Tesla's a great answer to bodies. When you have a weapon that has an average hit ratio of 100%, add +1 to it, and you're talking about 150%. Against high body count armies, it's going to stack up pretty quickly. And our Doomsday Arcs, they hit both big targets and small targets alike. You add that with the Doomside stratagem that really punishes castle armies, and in Destroyers with Exterminating Protocols, one of the better strats in the game for 1 CP, rerolling all hits, all wounds against any target for that unit. They can really dish out the damage turn 1. Our weaknesses are probably Enclosed Ruins and models with a 2-up and 3-up invulnerable, because our ability to efficiently put out mortal wounds is pretty much blown after the first turn. It's hard not to give the MVP to the Destroyers, But it's probably not for the reasons people suspect. It's not so much in the damage they did, but in the damage they took. Most people forget that destroyers are an infantry model, and with the ability to redeploy them with Veil of Darkness, you can look for those points on the board that potentially give them cover save while still being efficient offensively. And in doing that, you're now looking at a T5 model with 3 wounds with a 2-up save. It's going to take some shots to clear that unit. And when you have a fear tactic like the Doomscythe stratagem, which unfortunately I only got to use twice in this tournament, and the first time I only did a whole 2 wounds, they still provide a great distraction for the destroyers. So in that, you can't necessarily put all your shots into one basket. And if you don't kill destroyers down to the last model, they're coming back next turn. My most difficult matchup was definitely my game 3 on day 1. I was getting some Mortarion lists with a couple Leviathans, a Daredeo, a couple Plagueburst Crawlers, and Demon Prince, and some Deathtrap Terminators for Mortarion. I was lucky enough to go first, but unfortunately the Doomsday stratagem did all of 2 wounds. And the Doomsday Arcs, who have 3d6 shots, they got 4 shots. And so I only did 4 damage to Mortarion. So it definitely had me on my back foot on turn 1. But I was able to spread the board, and we started, luck started to average out, and it started being a real back and forth battle. At times it looked like he was ahead, and at times it looked like I was ahead. And it came down to that very last turn. And I was able to get the last kill on the Plagueburst Crawler to go ahead, and he was able to get into position to take out my arc to tie it back up at the very end of the game. So it was a great game. That was definitely my most difficult match of the tournament.
Congratulations, Julius. I hope your head doesn't get too big for that little fish tank you play in Northern California now that you're one of the big koi in that pond.
Now, there's one last player we want to talk about that attended the Central Valley Showdown. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a fancy bumper yet, and we wouldn't want to waste it on this guy. It's our overachieving underachiever of the week, Anthony DeMore.
You're so amazing, kinda. So, big deal about Anthony here is that he loves to run his Death Watch with no veterans, no storm shields, and no allies whatsoever. And does he have any problems? Absolutely not. So Anthony DeMore came in 5th place at the Central Valley Showdown. He brought a Deathwatch battalion with that operative requisition sanctioned 85 points left aside. His HQs were a watch captain with a jump pack, storm shield, and thunderhammer, and a watchmaster. He then had a squad, a veteran intercessor squad with 5 intercessors and 5 hellblasters, a second veteran intercessor squad with 5 intercessors and 5 hellblasters, and then a third intercessor squad with 1, 2, 3 aggressors and 2 inceptors with assault bolters, as well as 5 intercessors, and then another intercessor squad with 3 aggressors, 2 inceptors, and 5 intercessors. And finally, rounded it all out, he had a Reaver squad.
Reavers.
Something I have never seen in my entire life. He has a 5-man Reaver squad to top out the 2 Xiphon interceptors that make up the flyers in his list. What is this man doing?
Smoking crack.
Let's cut to some clips.
So I play pure faction Deathwatch because I've always liked them as an army. I've had them since they were one of those shitty little metallic, the pewter kits that Games Workshop sold, where it was 10 shoulder pads and 10 unique looking bolters and 10 unique looking helmets. I ran them as Sternguard for a while before I learned about competitive Warhammer, and kind of dropped them after that, and played a whole bunch of other stuff. But now it's really just a labor of love because I love the army. When they came out with the Codex in 2017, I was absolutely floored and loved every aspect of it and was super excited to get it to work competitively, and I've been doing my best ever since. Key components to my list are really, it's only 8 units, 9 units, so the list is really about getting the most out of every single piece of the list that I possibly can. Every unit has to do multiple things fairly well in order for me to do well in a competitive environment. The big strategy, I mean, in 10 out of 10 games that I play, I deep strike the 2 units of Intercessors and Hellblasters because they give me that long-range anti-tank firepower that the Xiphon Interceptors can't really do. They're really solid. I'm a huge fan of the native -1 on the bolters, and then you tack on the fact that they can wound on 2s against everything that's not a super heavy or a vehicle, and, I mean, we're in business. They definitely pull their weight. Strategy, though, against heavy armor revolves around the Xiphon Interceptors and the Smash Captain that I have in the list, because the Smash Captain carries the Tome of Ectoclades, which is a 6-inch bubble of any mission tactic that I want in addition to the mission tactic that's already active. The key difference there is that normally mission tactics only applies to infantry, bikers, and dreadnoughts, but the 6-inch bubble from the tome allows me to give it to any Deathwatch unit. And the Smash Captain is the only unit in my army that's actually fast enough to keep up with the Xiphon Interceptors for 1 to 2 turns while I take out the big pieces. Generally speaking, either by the end of turn 3, either both planes are dead or everything that the planes should kill is dead. Round 5 was against some guy, I think I've seen him a couple of times before. I think his name was Paul. He seemed pretty full of himself. He was running some super snowflakey Tau with Sacia Sept and a Riptide, a Burst Tide, and then he had 3 individual units of what are they called? The hazard suits with the fusion cascades. And then he had 2 Ion commanders and a YOLO commander with fusions, and that was a pretty tough game. But I did end up pulling that one out. It was kind of a blur. He was talking about this Best Coast Pairings app the whole time. It was super, super weird. He wouldn't I think he was more focused on talking to me about why Best Coast Pairings was the best, as opposed to focusing on our game. So I'm pretty sure that's just about the only reason I won, because he just wasn't paying attention.
There you have it, folks. Anthony DeMore's crack-smoking 4-1 Deathwatch list.
What a guy. What a champion. And the fact that he smack-talked Paul McKelvey, the champion of Best Coast Pairings.
You went 4-1, and you'd think that someone who'd done that, would have shown a little bit more class. I mean, to rag on Paul McKelvey after everything he's done for the hobby and for competitive Warhammer, I would have liked to see him. I don't know. I thought we were gonna give this guy an award for doing something cool, and then he kind of brings our podcast into ill repute. And I want to thank everyone who's made it this far into the show. It's much longer than we normally would have intended. And also, I think probably there's a few of you out there who maybe are considering, whether or not this is even an appropriate thing to do at a time like this. We've got a lot of friends out there who are hurting. Us as a community, we've lost a really great leader and a great voice. And I think one thing I might try and suggest is that it's at times like these that we gotta lean on each other and try and bring each other up. And even though something very serious has happened and there is a great void in a lot of people who we care about's lives right now, it's times like this where we want to try and focus on levity, good memories, good times. And at all of these events that we talked about this week, new memories and new good times were formed. And that's exactly the type of thing that's going to get us through this. So we dedicate this podcast to Geoff and to everyone out there who's hurting, whether or not you knew him personally or not.
Goodbye, Geoff. May the Emperor watch over everything you do.
This has been 40k Stats Center, a presentation of the Frontline Gaming Podcast Network. Like what we do? Subscribe to and rate us on YouTube and wherever podcasts can be found. Join the conversation. Follow 40k Stats Center on Facebook. You can also support the show directly by joining the Chapter Tactics Patreon and competitive 40k in general via the ITC Patreon, or by grabbing a subscription to BCP.